You've been told this your whole life. Try harder, push more, focus more, want it more. But what if the moment you start forcing is the moment things begin to fall apart? You've felt this before. The more you chase something, love, money, peace, clarity, the farther it seems to move away. And that's confusing, because effort is supposed to work. That's what makes this so frustrating. Here's the quiet truth most people never hear. Trying harder can actually signal resistance. In the spiritual and manifestation world, effort isn't the same as alignment. Trying comes from tension, from fear, from the feeling that this isn't here yet, and I need to fix that. And the universe, call it energy, life, or awareness, responds more to state than struggle. When you're trying hard, your body tightens, your thoughts race, your breath shortens. You're not moving with life, you're pushing against it. And pushing creates friction. Think about how sleep works. The harder you try to fall asleep, the more awake you become. Or love. The more you try to make someone choose you, the more desperate it feels. Even happiness slips away the moment you chase it. That's not coincidence. That's feedback. Trying says, I don't trust this will happen unless I force it. And that belief quietly shapes everything that follows. But here's the part no one explains clearly. Letting go doesn't mean doing nothing. It doesn't mean giving up or lowering your standards. It means shifting where your action comes from. And once you understand that difference, everything changes. Because the real question isn't, how do I try harder? It's, why does ease feel so uncomfortable right now? And that's where things start to get interesting. Most people don't realize this, but the discomfort with ease isn't laziness. It's conditioning. You were trained to believe that value comes from struggle, that if something arrives easily, it must not be real, or worse, it could disappear just as fast. So when life asks you to soften, your mind panics. Because trying feels safe, trying feels like control. The ego loves effort because effort gives it a job. It says, if I stay busy, I won't have to feel uncertain. But manifestation doesn't respond to busyness. It responds to clarity and coherence. Here's the subtle trap. When you're trying hard, your attention is locked on what's missing. And attention is creative. Whatever you focus on, lack, delay, effort, you energize. That's why force backfires. It's not that action is wrong, it's that action born from fear sends a different signal than action born from trust. One contracts, the other flows. Imagine gripping a rope in a tug-of-war with life. You're pulling with everything you've got, convinced that if you let go, you'll lose. But what if the tension itself is the problem? What if the moment you stop pulling, the rope drops? This is why ancient teachings talk about allowing, not wishing, not begging, allowing. Because allowance is a state where you're no longer arguing with the present moment. And here's the uncomfortable question most people avoid. If you stopped trying to control the outcome, who would you be then? Because that identity shift is where resistance hides. And once you see it, you can't unsee it. But before we go there, we need to clear up a dangerous misunderstanding about letting go that keeps people stuck for years. One of the biggest lies in the manifestation space is this: if you let go, you'll lose your desire. That fear keeps people clinging, overthinking, micromanaging energy, watching signs like a hawk. But real letting go doesn't erase desire, it removes desperation. Letting go is not forgetting what you want. It's releasing the inner argument with where you are. Most people think they're letting go, but they're secretly checking. Is it here yet? Am I doing this right? Did I mess up my vibration? That's not surrender. That's control in disguise. And control always comes from fear. Here's how you can tell the difference. Trying feels tight. Allowing feels grounded. When you're trying, your mind is loud. It keeps score. It watches time. It compares. When you're aligned, there's a quiet certainty underneath your actions, even if nothing has shown up yet. This is why forcing affirmations can backfire. If you repeat, I am abundant, while your body feels anxious, the dominant signal isn't the words. It's the tension. The universe responds to coherence, not repetition. So when people say, I tried manifesting and it didn't work. What they usually mean is, I tried to control reality instead of becoming available to it. Availability is powerful. It says, I'm open, not needy. And neediness repels, not because you're wrong, but because it's asking life to fill a hole you won't sit with. Here's the paradox. The moment you stop needing the outcome to feel okay, outcomes start moving. Not because you stopped caring, but because you stopped squeezing. And that raises a deeper question most people never ask. What part of you believes you won't be okay unless this works? That belief is the real block. And once you see it, effort is no longer the answer. At a subtle level, trying sends a message. Not to the universe as some external judge, but to your own nervous system. Trying says, something is wrong right now. And your body listens. When your system believes something is wrong, it shifts into protection mode. Tight shoulders, shallow breathing, narrow focus. You stop seeing options. You stop receiving. This is why so many manifestations stall right before they happen. The desire feels close, and suddenly you grip harder. You watch more signs. You push, and that contraction shuts the door you were about to walk through. Because manifestation isn't about effort, it's about signal clarity. If you constantly try, you're broadcasting lack. Not intentionally, energetically. The subtext becomes, I don't have this yet, and that's a problem. But aligned action feels different. It feels like curiosity, like movement without panic, like showing up because it feels right, not because you're afraid of falling behind. Think of a river. You don't push the water downstream. You place your boat and steer. Trying harder is like paddling upstream while blaming the current. Here's the key shift. Your job is not to force outcomes. It's to stay open enough to recognize them. And openness requires safety. Your system has to feel okay now, not later, not once the manifestation arrives. This is why stillness is uncomfortable for so many people. When you stop trying, the noise fades, and unresolved fear surfaces. So people go back to effort because effort distracts. But what if the pause is where the power is? Because once you stop leaking energy into resistance, something surprising happens. Life starts meeting you halfway. Synchronicities feel natural. Doors open without struggle. And the question becomes, if ease is available, why are you still fighting? The answer to that explains almost everything. Here's the part that's hard to admit. Effort gives the ego a sense of identity. When you're trying, you feel useful. You feel responsible. You feel like a good person who's doing the work. Letting go threatens that identity. Because if things can happen without force, then who are you without the struggle? The ego doesn't actually want peace. It wants predictability. And effort feels predictable. You do something, you feel in control, even if it's not working. This is why people stay stuck in hustle energy, even when it's draining them. They don't know who they are without the grind. And in manifestation, hustle often disguises itself as high vibration action. But real alignment doesn't burn you out. It energizes you. There's a difference between action that's inspired and action that's compulsive. Inspired action feels light. Time moves differently. You're present. Compulsive action feels urgent, heavy. Like if you stop, everything will collapse. That urgency is the signal. The universe doesn't respond to urgency. It responds to resonance. And resonance can't be rushed. This is also why comparing your timeline to others blocks you. The moment you think, they have it, why don't I? You step out of your own frequency and into someone else's path. Yeah, and you can't receive what isn't meant for you in that moment. So what do you do instead? You stop asking, what more can I do? And start asking, what am I afraid will happen if I stop pushing? That question exposes the root. And once the root is seen, effort naturally softens. Because here's the truth, no one says plainly, you don't attract what you want. You attract what you are being. And becoming doesn't require force, it requires honesty. And that brings us to the most misunderstood word in spirituality, surrender. Surrender sounds passive, weak, like waving a white flag. But real surrender is one of the most active inner states there is. Surrender doesn't mean you stop taking action. It means you stop arguing with reality. Most people think surrender means, I give up. In truth, it means, I trust myself enough to respond instead of react. Reaction comes from fear. Response comes from presence. When you surrender, your nervous system relaxes. And when it relaxes, perception widens. You notice opportunities you were too tense to see before. Conversations land differently. Ideas come without strain. This is why people say things show up out of nowhere. They didn't come from nowhere. You just became available. The irony is that surrender often feels like things are getting worse because your usual coping mechanism, effort, has been removed. There's space now, silence, and silence reveals what effort was covering. But this is where alignment is born. Think of a clenched fist. You can't receive anything while it's closed. Surrender opens the hand, not to beg, but to allow. And here's a powerful reframe. Surrender is choosing presence over prediction. You stop micromanaging the how. You focus on what's real right now, your breath, your body. The next small step that feels honest. This is where inspired action lives, not in forcing a 5-year plan, but in responding to the moment with clarity. And here's the quiet miracle. When you act from surrender, results often come faster, but they don't feel rushed, which leads to a question most people are afraid to test. What if the thing you want requires less effort than you think? The answer might challenge everything you've been taught. There's a massive difference between doing something because you're aligned and doing something because you're afraid of not doing it. From the outside, both look like action. From the inside, they couldn't be more different. Forced action feels heavy. You procrastinate, then push yourself. You second guess. You wonder if it's enough. Even when you do the right thing, there's tension underneath. Inspired action feels clean, simple, almost obvious. You don't need to convince yourself. It doesn't drain you. It sharpens you. And here's the key. Inspired action usually comes after stillness. That's why people who never stop trying rarely feel inspired. Their minds are too noisy to hear intuition. They're always broadcasting, but never listening. Stillness isn't laziness. It's calibration. When you pause, your system resets. You return to the present. And from presence, the next step reveals itself, often smaller than you expected. Not a massive leap, a text, a decision, a boundary, a rest. And that small step carries more power than 100 frantic ones. This is why manifesting feels effortless for some people. They're not doing less, they're doing less wrong action. They wait until action feels inevitable, not urgent. So instead of asking, how can I make this happen? Try asking, what feels true right now? Truth is magnetic. Effort isn't. And once you learn to recognize the body signal of inspired action, calm, alert, grounded, you stop wasting energy on paths that were never yours. Which brings us to something practical. Because knowing this intellectually isn't enough. How do you actually stop trying without giving up? That shift is subtle, and it changes everything. Stopping the push doesn't mean stopping your life. It means stopping the inner pressure. Here's a simple truth. You can't force relaxation, but you can remove what's tightening you. Start with awareness. Notice when you say, I have to. That phrase is usually a lie born from fear. Ask instead, what happens if I don't do this right now? Often, nothing bad happens. The urgency dissolves. Next, shift from outcome focus to state focus. Instead of asking, is this working? Ask, how do I feel while doing this? If your body feels contracted, pause. Alignment always feels more spacious than resistance. This doesn't mean you wait forever. It means you move when your system says yes, not when fear says now. Another powerful shift. Shorten your time horizon. Obsession with the future creates anxiety. Come back to today. The universe responds fastest to presence. And here's a quiet practice that works better than most techniques. Do one thing fully. No multitasking, no checking, just presence. Presence communicates trust. When you stop pushing, You also stop leaking energy into imaginary problems. And that energy returns as clarity. You think better. You choose better. This is why things often click after people give up. They didn't give up. They stopped interfering. And once you feel that difference, you'll notice something surprising. Life feels like it's cooperating again. Not perfectly, but intelligently. And that opens the door to something most people misunderstand about ease. For a lot of people, ease feels wrong. Not because it is, but because it's unfamiliar. If you grew up believing that good things require struggle, then ease feels like a trick, like something bad must be coming. So the moment life softens, you tense back up, you start trying again. This is subconscious self-sabotage. Ease threatens old survival patterns. Your nervous system learned, if I'm not alert, I'm not safe. So even when things are flowing, your body stays braced. That brace blocks reception. Ease isn't laziness. Ease is efficiency without fear. Nature works with ease. Trees don't strain to grow. Water doesn't push to flow. And yet, everything gets done. The only thing fighting life is the human mind trying to control timing. When you allow ease, you stop proving your worth through effort. You stop earning outcomes through exhaustion. And that can feel like losing your identity. But ease doesn't mean nothing happens. It means things happen without internal conflict. This is why manifestation accelerates when you finally relax. You stop sending mixed signals. Your thoughts, emotions, and actions align. And suddenly, less resistance means more momentum. Ease feels suspicious only until you realize struggle was never the requirement. Clarity was. And once clarity stabilizes, effort naturally recalibrates. You still act, you still move, but it's clean. Which raises the final, uncomfortable question. If things can be easier, why haven't you allowed that yet? The answer reveals the last piece of this puzzle. At the bottom of trying harder, there's almost always fear. Not loud fear, quiet fear. The kind that whispers, if this doesn't work, what does that say about me? Or worse, what happens if I relax and nothing comes? Effort becomes armor. When you're trying, you don't have to feel the uncertainty. You don't have to sit in not knowing. Trying gives you something to hold on to when trust feels risky. But manifestation doesn't require certainty. It requires willingness. Willingness to be with the present moment without bargaining with it. Willingness to feel okay even before the outcome arrives. And that's terrifying for a system trained to earn safety through performance. This is why effort spikes right before breakthroughs. The old pattern senses it's about to lose control, so it tightens, it pushes, it panics. And if you don't recognize that moment, you mistake fear for motivation. Here's the reframe that changes everything. You don't need to try harder, you need to feel safer now. Safety creates openness. Openness creates alignment. Alignment creates movement. When you soothe your system through breath, rest, honesty, the signal shifts. Not because you did it right, but because you stopped fighting yourself. And when you stop fighting yourself, life stops fighting you. Which brings us to the final shift, the one that turns effort into trust. Living from allowance doesn't mean every day feels magical. It means you stop measuring your worth by outcomes. You still have preferences, you still take action, but you're no longer waiting to be okay. Okayness becomes the starting point, not the reward. From this state, effort becomes optional, not compulsive. You move because it feels aligned. You pause because it feels honest, and both are productive. This is where intuition sharpens. You notice when something isn't for you without forcing yourself to make it work. You release faster, you recover quicker. Allowance also restores timing. Things arrive when you're ready to receive them, not when you're trying to prove something. And yes, sometimes nothing happens for a while, but it doesn't feel empty. It feels spacious, pregnant with possibility. That's the difference. When you stop trying, you don't stop growing. You stop resisting growth. And eventually, you look back and realize the struggle wasn't the path, it was the delay. Which leaves one final truth to sit with. Sometimes, the reason things get worse when you try harder is because life is asking you to trust a deeper intelligence, not outside of you, within you. Trying harder isn't wrong, it's just outdated. It belonged to a version of you that believed force was the only option. But now you know something else. Ease isn't weakness. Stillness isn't stagnation. Letting go isn't loss. It's alignment catching up. So the next time you feel the urge to push, pause, breathe. Ask yourself, what if I don't need to fight this? That question alone shifts the signal. And when the signal shifts, life responds differently. Subtly at first, then clearly, then undeniably. Not because you tried harder, but because you finally stopped blocking what was already on its way. Sit with that. And when you're ready, let effort soften into trust and see what moves toward you next.